My name is Shellie, and I'm a pediatric registered respiratory therapist, and I've been working in ICUs for over 17 years now. I work in a Trauma One center for children, which is the highest level trauma center there is, and I also work in a level 4 NICU, which is the highest level NICU there is. So what that means basically is we're the top of the food chain in the healthcare industry, and we take all of the kids that are too medically complex or too sick to go anywhere else. So we have a lot of life and death situations. As a respiratory therapist, we're in charge of breathing for children. So it can get pretty intense sometimes. The tappers have helped me a lot. I do have a lot of things that I do for mental health. I have a strong spiritual rituals things that I believe in. I have had EMDR in the past. I do, more recently, I started doing acupuncture for trauma, which has also been very helpful, but those are more for after the fact. Like it's not an in the moment can help you thing. When I started wearing the tappers, I noticed a huge difference. I noticed, when children are too sick for conventional ventilation, which is basically how you and I breathe all the time, we will put them on what's called high frequency ventilation, and we'll breathe for them like 300 to 700 times a minute, sometimes more, depending on what their disease process is. And we're running these ventilators, but these kids are too sick to be able to move. So if kids are too sick to be able to move, they're in the ICU, the OR comes to us. So the surgeons come to us, everybody comes to us, and anesthesia is not trained in high frequency ventilation. So we go into these bedside surgeries and we're covered in our sterile gear. So our hair is covered, we're in our jumpsuits and our feet are covered. Everything's covered in sterile gear, and we are watching these bedside surgeries and keeping an eye on our CO2 and our ventilation, our oxygenation. We're keeping an eye on all that. And the anesthesiologist is kind of hanging out with us, keeping an eye on the medication and the sedation. And we get to watch the true talent of the pediatric surgeons do some amazing, amazing things. And the tough thing is people, especially I, tend to struggle when our thoughts and our feelings don't line up with facts. Like the thought that I have is that no parent should ever have to outlive their child, that should just not be reality. But the fact of the world is that it does happen, and it's devastating, and it can be very hard. And when we go into these surgeries, these are some incredibly brave individuals that can take these kids that would definitely die without surgery, but they might possibly die during surgery. And they can take that and say, okay, well, we're going to try. We're going to see what happens. We're going to try. And these individuals are so brave, and I think, to even try that. And those kinds of situations, those kinds of life and death situations, I mean, luckily, more often than not, we see amazing, amazing miracles. Things that I feel so blessed and so fortunate to be able to witness in my life. But occasionally they don't turn out, and that's just life. That's how it is. You can do everything you can to control a situation, and ultimately we don't have that control, and it just doesn't work out. And I need to be able to hold my emotions and my triggers and my thoughts at bay, so I can actually be there for these families and be there for these parents. And I really feel like the tappers helped me a lot with that.
Can you tell the difference, Shellie, because you've been a pediatric respiratory therapist for a long time? So, I mean, can you tell the difference like before versus now using them, and just maybe just talk about the burnout in your field and just maybe how the tappers are helping you?
Yeah. So the tappers, the burnout in our field is pretty bad, as you can imagine, because as a respiratory therapist, if you go work with adults, you only have to know basically one set of vitals and a couple ventilators and maybe a Bi-Tapp or something. And I'm not saying that their job's easier, because they have their own They have their own challenges. But if you work with children, we don't give up on children very easily. So we have tons of equipment, we have tons of things that we do, lots more to remember. And what's okay for vitals for a 2-month-old is not going to be okay vitals for like an 18-year-old, and it might be different for a 12-year-old. So you have to be able to think you have to be able to think basically. And if that panic or that anxiety takes over your brain, it shuts down your ability to think. So when you have these tappers going, it's a lot easier to hold that at bay so you can think clearly, you can remember things, you can stay calm, you can stay focused, you can contribute to the team effort. And I do think, because I've noticed that anxiety can be one of the most contagious emotions. So if you have one person on your team that kind of loses it, and then it kind of starts to snowball and people kind of start to panic. And it's really easy if you have tappers on and you're the calm one to be like, hey, guys, wait, you got to kind of throw yourself in front of that freight train and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
They're probably co-regulating off you because you're
Yeah,
staying calmer.
So it's nice if one person's calm and they can kind of spread their calm, because that can happen too.
So you can tell, like so you're wearing the tappers during your shift and you can tell when they're on versus when they're off. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's really funny because it's just a constant calm sensation that's kind of going on in your brain. And you, after a while, you kind of, it almost feels like you don't notice it anymore. It's really weird because you're like, oh, you think that you don't notice it, but when it turns off, immediately, if that makes sense.
How do you know? How do you know when it's off?
It's just weird because you feel different. So you'll be sitting there doing something, or chaos is erupting and you're just in the middle of it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm feeling more agitated, like my heart's racing more, like I'm getting more, not irritated, but like stimulated by things, if that makes sense. And it's not as easy to calm down. And then you're like, wait, what's going on? Oh, they turned off. And then you just turn it back on. Just keep
Well,
going.
and I think what's nice about them is because they're just working in the background, because you're in a situation where you really can't step away to try to
No.
calm down. You have to be calm in the moment. And so I love that's how the tappers are helping you. And I also just want to let everyone know you are the reason that actually we've extended the time for now. I mean, it was 60 minutes to 240 minutes, so 4-hour tapping. And I mean, do you want to say why
Right,
you asked us to do
right.
that? Yeah, that's a great story.
Well, it was funny. We were in a bedside surgery that was not going very well, and it can be very tense because this is life and death stuff. And I was feeling it when the tappers turned off, and I would try and turn them back on, but you're in clothes that are on top of your other clothes. You've got all this sterile gear on, and you're like, okay, where's that tiny button? I've got to find that tiny button, because you can't pull your phone out. And so it was funny. I was talking to my trauma therapist, and she's like, well, what would it hurt if you just email and ask them? She's like, just tell them that and say, hey, can you guys make this last just a little bit longer? Because it would really make my job easier. And I was like, you know what? I'll do that. So I did. And then I was shocked when you called me. I wasn't expecting that great of customer service, but yeah, it's been a really good thing. And it was funny because my sister uses them for anxiety too. And she was like, oh, hey, I just noticed on the app it says 240 minutes now. And I was like, yep, you're welcome.
We should put your signature on that, right?
Like, that was because I begged.
Mhm.
I was like, because I really need them in those situations
Yeah.
where, and I know my coworkers do, and I have had coworkers. I mean, we're human too. At work, we do whatever we can to make miracles happen. We will skip breakfast, lunch, dinner. We don't drink. We don't pee. I mean, we'll give a lot of ourselves, but we're human too. And sometimes our personal lives bleed over into our work lives. And sometimes I know that my coworkers are having a really hard time in their personal life. And if they have to go into a surgery in the ICU, I've taken them off before and like shoved them in my coworker's socks because we can't have anything from the elbows down, shove them in my coworker's socks and be like, okay, find a good rhythm. We'll turn this on. This will really help you. And a lot of them have commented that it has helped, and
I
it's
love
helped.
that. I
And
love that.
that's why I wish I could give it to everyone. And the surgeons too, because those surgeries are very, very intense
Well, just
sometimes.
intense and so stressful, like you said. And yeah, I, I, that's our goal too. So maybe we can figure that out together. I wanted to ask you too, when you use them versus when you didn't use them and then you go home, like, can you tell a difference in your energy level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have you
Like,
noticed?
well, that's what I was saying when I use them. And now I don't go a shift without them. I will not go a shift without them because when I use them at work, I would turn them on every hour. And now, like I was telling you, I turn them on and I'm like, oh, 4 hours. Okay, I only have 8 hours to go. We're already a third of the way there. So I kind of use it as a way to judge through work. But I've noticed I have more energy when I get home after they've been on all day. And I don't know if that's because I've been doing this for so long. Like I said, you feel like you can handle it just fine and it's not going to make a difference. But when you wear them all day and you get home and you have more energy, you're like, okay, that's weird, but I wonder why I have more energy. Or maybe I have more energy because my brain's not working as hard to maintain that calm at work. And that also helps too. So I've noticed I have them on, like I'll have them on faster at work. Sometimes I slow them down when I get home to calm down because they have said, keep it on faster if you're trying to concentrate, slow them down if you need to calm down. Sometimes because of the work we do and the trauma that we're exposed to, we can have nightmares, which is not very fun. And I'll get up in the middle of the night and I'll put them on because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be able to sleep. And I'll put them on really low and really slow. And then I'm able to go back to sleep. So it does help a lot with sleep too. And if you're getting good sleep, then you're better at your job. And if you have more energy, you're better at your job. If you can stay calm in intense, crazy situations, you're going to be better at your job. And if you have more energy when you get home, your family is going to be more grateful that you're able to handle all of that stress that you have with your job. It's not going to bleed over into your personal life.
I think as you're coming home more regulated. And so, just as a trauma therapist, the things you see it, I hear it, and I can't sleep sometimes too. And I use the tappers the very same way so my
Yeah.
sleep isn't as compromised. And I like that at night just to turn them slower and your brain just chooses to follow the tapping versus that rumination. And it does help people get better sleep. So I'm glad you know to use it that way.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because we joke around in the ICU all the time. We'll be talking to new nurses and they're like, oh, well, I can sleep just fine when I'm not going to work the next day. And so you think your work doesn't affect you, but I'm here to tell you if you can sleep just fine, except for the day before you go to work, then that's a very high indication that your work is troubling you more than you realize.
Well, you guys are dealing with heavy trauma. And I would
Yeah.
just ask you, I mean, that what you've shared is beautiful. And is there anything else you'd want to share, or just as you think about different people using them in your personal life, is there any stories you want to share? Because obviously they can be used in a variety of ways.
Oh, yes. And I've done little experiments on my own. I do little experiments in my own life because I got them because my sister told me about them. And because she has very bad anxiety. And she was like, I really think this will help you at work. And it has immensely helped me. And I use them at work, but then my daughter would come home from college for the weekend and she'd be super stressed. And she'd be like, can I borrow these? So she started borrowing them on the weekends. But I was like, you can't keep them because I have to have them for work. So then she's like, I want them for Christmas. So we got some for her for Christmas. But, and sometimes my son uses them. But also, we were camping this last summer and we're out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if I told you this, but we're camping and we're like 2 hours from an ER. And my niece had come home from college and her roommate was with us, my niece and her roommate. And her roommate came running to me like first thing in the morning. And she's like, something is wrong, like with my niece. She's like, she almost passed out. She's in a ton of pain. Like, I don't know what's wrong. So I went to go check on her and we determined that it was probably kidney stones, but she had almost passed out from that amount of pain. And I mean, I have a trauma kit and all kinds of stuff I can give her, but I can't solve kidney stones in the middle of nowhere either. So I'm like, okay, well, and my sister wanted me to take her to the emergency room. So we did everything we could to make her comfortable and nothing was seeming to work. and she couldn't hold down any medicine. But I figured, why not? Let's just do. So we put tappers on her ankles, really low, like just really low, really calming, and we started to drive because I was really worried about driving for an hour and a half with, all this person that's in so much pain that they're passing out. And it was really interesting because that's back when they had the 1 hour timer on them, and we got past an hour, and she was okay for a while, and we got past an hour, and she started like moaning and throwing up again and being like in a ton of pain. And I was like, wait a minute. And I tapped her, and I asked her, I said, honey, did those tappers turn off? And she was like, yeah, they did. She goes, I didn't notice that they were helping me, but they were. So we turned them back on, and it got better again until we got to the ER. So I was like, oh, they really do work for pain too. I mean, I was desperate, and I'm like, what the heck? We're in the middle of nowhere, but
Well, they say the amygdala gets activated in the pain experience, and so it's calming that down. And I mean, you're seeing it in real time. That's really cool.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really
So
cool.
when I saw that, I was like, oh, there's another thing we could use them for.
Can you think of anything else you'd want to share? You've done great.
um, I don't know.
That was good.
I don't know. It is interesting because I do, um, like I was saying, I've done some EMDR before.
Mhm.
And if people are going to go into being a first responder or an ICU worker or these crazy careers that we have, you really need to find a way to deal with all the trauma that you're going to witness, because it's a compounded thing that's not going to go away. It lasts. I mean, we see it all the time and tons of it. And EMDR is very helpful. Trauma therapy is also very helpful. I've recently started doing trauma acupuncture at the behest of like my EMDR therapist was like, why don't you try this? And
Good.
it was very interesting. I did the trauma acupuncture, and it's very good, but it also forces stored emotions out of your body.
Mm.
And then I noticed that it made me cry all day, probably because I deal with a lot of really depressing stuff. But I noticed after the acupuncture, I just put the tappers on the way home. And I was like, okay, I obviously have a lot of emotions that I need to process. And today is just going to be that day that we're going to process it. So I feel like it was also compounded because like the acupuncture really does help, but then afterwards the more processing of it, and then you wake up the next day and I felt better than I felt in years.
I love that. And I remember when you first reached out, it was through email, and you talked about, and you said it at the beginning of this too, just that you have a lot of coping skills in place, like before you go to work and after. And I think that's so important. And then what I love about the tappers is it's not competing with any of those things. I feel like it's just complementing it. And then you have that resource in those high stress moments and as part of recovery. And I just love that you've got all of that working together for you. And that's probably, I mean, I don't know what the average, just the burnout in your department, but that's probably why you're still there. And then they get the benefit of, in my opinion, of all your years of experience. Like, we want to help you stay in the field. We want to help people stay in the field with all that training, but it makes sense why the burnout rate's high too.
Yeah, and the burnout rate is higher too with kids.
Yeah.
Just because I was telling you, like the stuff you have to know, but also for us as a respiratory therapist, it is, and I can tell you because I've done both, but it is much more emotionally traumatic for us to withdraw life support on somebody's child, or sorry, I'm not going to cry, or their 4-year-old than it is on somebody's like grandfather or a 90-year-old that's had a great life. Like that is just a very, very incredibly tense situation
Yeah.
that's not good. And the tappers kind of help us keep our emotions in check so we can be there for those families, which is really what it's about. The work we do, that's what it's about. And then we have to kind of handle our stuff outside of work, if that makes sense. But the
Hmm.
tappers make it easier to be able to do that. So
Well, man, I I just know there's a price you pay for the work you do, and I think
yeah.
it's sacred work, and you're a gift. You're a gift to the families that you get to work with. But I know there's a price you pay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you for these because they've made a very big difference. Like after, because I've been doing it for a year and a half or 2 years now, maybe.
Hmm.
And before that, I was just such a burnout level, like just yeah, because like you said, in these type of careers, and it's the same with police officers and firefighters, like they just give so much to so many people that there's not much left for us sometimes.
I think so. And then that would be true with your families too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Because
that's
I told
what
my husband before, I'm like, I feel like I gave so much at work today that I have nothing left for you guys. And it makes me really, really sad. And so that's why I'm really excited when I wear my tappers all day and I come home and I'm like, oh, I actually have like a little bit of energy for not having to fight that all day long.
that to me, that piece right there, when I talk to first responders, and you very much would be in that group for sure. And one of the guys just said, everything I'm doing is for my family. And so then for them to pay the
Yeah,
price because of my work, I never wanted that. And so
right.
this is a
None of
kind
us
of a
want.
way out in a way, or a way to regulate. So you have a little bit in the tank by the time you come home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because, yeah, experiencing that much trauma does that to us.
Mhm.
Yeah.